Diddy's trying to kill me. You know, Diddy and Jay-Z, Auntie Sean and Auntie Yolanda. No matter how many contracts you try to take out on my life, no matter how many times you try to threaten my family or threaten people to stay away from me, no matter how many things you try to do to me and how many things you've tried to do to me, it ain't working. Don't play with somebody that you know got the drop on you.
And an example of one such individual who went through those sorts of attacks is the actor Orlando Brown. He was on Disney, and I remember everyone telling us that he was totally insane and deranged when he was saying a lot of things that at the time sounded crazy, particularly about Diddy. Take a listen.
The requirement is you gotta say no to Diddy. If it's new booty in the building, you know he's...
Los Angeles. Orlando Brown, the former television star known for both his early career success and widely publicized personal struggles, has formally accepted a federal subpoena to testify for the prosecution in the case of United States versus Sean Diddy Combs. A signed acknowledgement entered into the district court docket today confirms Brown's agreement to testify under oath and details his delivery of a series of voice memo recordings made during 3 weekend visits to properties associated with Combs. According to a declaration from Brown's legal counsel, the recordings were captured using a secondary mobile phone kept in airplane mode, activated only briefly so Brown could narrate his observations about guest wing activity, staff, routines, and late-night hallway movements. Federal investigators assert that each memo contains metadata precisely matching wireless router logs previously seized under warrant, with internal timestamps synchronized to within fractions of a second. A technical affidavit, originally filed under seal and later released in redacted form, further confirms that the device's hardware supports the authenticity of the recordings, and their timeline court documents reveal that Orlando Brown's digital footprint, captured in seized wireless router logs, places him physically inside restricted corridors at the exact times he described in his recordings. Prosecutors are expected to argue that these voice memos enhance a broader body of evidence, including spreadsheets from former security chief Roger Bonds and data from lighting automation systems, which show manual overrides during overnight hours. Notably, Brown's audio captures staff radio chatter using the term heartbeat reset, a phrase prosecutors say is code for door cycles and brief surveillance camera dimming, terminology that also appears in other collected evidence. The defense, however, downplays this, calling it standard security lingo and questioning Brown's credibility, suggesting his statements may be influenced by a desire for leniency in an unrelated firearms case in Nevada. Under his cooperation agreement, Brown could receive a reduced sentence if he testifies truthfully and completely. The deal, however, includes a strict clause. Any false or misleading statement nullifies the potential leniency. Prosecutors highlight this clause as a safeguard for truthfulness. The defense points to it as a clear motive for Brown to shape his story in self-interest. Judge Aaron Subramanian has scheduled a short hearing to verify the chain of custody for the audio files and confirm that Brown will testify during the government's second week of presenting direct evidence. Inside the courtroom, both legal teams are preparing to tell vastly different stories. The prosecution plans to play Brown's recordings in sequence, matching each clip with visual network data showing door sensor triggers and lighting anomalies. They also intend to call a digital forensics expert to testify that the recordings show no signs of tampering or editing. In response to the prosecution's audio evidence, the defense plans to bring in a hospitality industry consultant who is expected to testify that it's common practice for luxury estates to disable hallway cameras in the interest of aesthetic, presentation, and guest privacy. The consultant is also likely to explain that linen turnover records, referenced in supply invoices, are consistent with the demands of maintaining high-end event environments, not signs of misconduct. The ripple effects of Brown's subpoena were felt quickly across the industry. Within days, 3 major talent agencies updated their event safety requirements, now mandating clear device use policies, immediate guest departure options, and an on-site third-party liaison empowered to document concerns independently and without needing prior approval. One of the nation's top private event insurers also began revising its underwriting forms, adding detailed questions about door lock overrides, hallway lighting presets, and policies for retaining staff communication records. Meanwhile, legislative Aides tracking the case have added Orlando Brown's name to the witness list for upcoming congressional hearings tied to the proposed Creative Industry Guest Safety Act. If passed, the bill would establish confidential reporting systems and set minimum training standards for private event security staff. Advocacy groups representing performers and creatives have applauded Brown's role in the case, calling his recordings a vital safeguard when formal oversight is absent or ineffective. As of now, Sean Diddy Combs remains in federal custody, awaiting trial. His legal team submitted a new filing today arguing that linen supply fluctuations, door sensor patterns, and customized lighting routines presented by prosecutors are simply routine features of exclusive hospitality setups. Prosecutors, however, responded by, "The moment prosecutors demonstrated that Brown's audio recordings aligned, down to the second, with metadata from router logs and lighting control systems, they argued the pattern all but spoke for itself." As jury selection approaches, the court has added a single screening question to its standard voir dire: whether any juror's familiarity with Orlando Brown's past television work might affect their impartiality. Those who admit bias will be dismissed for cause. If the jury ultimately finds Brown credible and accepts his recordings as authentic real-time documentation, the government's timeline will be strengthened by a rare blend of human observation and synchronized digital evidence. The defense, meanwhile, will seek to distance Brown's troubled public image from the facts at hand. Their argument hinges on the claim that the operational quirks of running a luxury estate, such as odd lighting schedules and frequent linen changes, are being wrongly portrayed as suspicious activity. With a tight schedule ahead, both legal teams are under pressure. Prosecutors have signaled that they plan to rest their case soon after Brown's testimony. The defense has not yet indicated whether Sean Combs will take the stand in his own defense. Closing arguments are tentatively scheduled for early next month, after which jurors will deliberate over a complex body of evidence, including spreadsheets, router activity logs, automated lighting records, and, if fully admitted, Brown's hallway audio files. The case transitioned quickly into its technical phase once Brown's cooperation was formally added to the record. The first to testify was Special Agent Lynn Rivas, who oversees digital evidence management for the investigation. Special Agent Lynn Rivas from the forensics lab that imaged Brown's phone explained the extraction process to the jury. She detailed how investigators preserved the internal drive, generated a hash value, and created a working copy for analysis. The hash value remained consistent through all transfers, a point the defense accepted but used to question possible edits before seizure. Rivas testified that waveform scans showed no splicing and that file headers had continuous time codes matching the phone's system log. Once authentication was confirmed, prosecutors played the first voice memo, time-stamped at 1 a.m. during Brown's earliest visit. The audio began with Brown whispering, "North Wing, second corridor," followed by radio chatter using the phrase, "heartbeat reset." Prosecutors paused the clip at that moment and showed a router log from the same time, recording Brown's phone connecting to an access point labeled. The router log showed guest app N2 sending a single file header before going back offline. Defense attorney Matthew Hartley argued that this was simply a personal device briefly syncing its clock. On redirect, Rivas clarified that the handset had no SIM card or Wi-Fi credentials for automatic sync, implying it was manually activated. The government then introduced a procurement ledger, verified by State Supply Coordinator Olivia Martinez, which listed an urgent order for guest linens. With a handwritten note, "Use heartbeat cart." Martinez explained that the phrase referred to a color-coded laundry trolley used only in the guest wing. The defense questioned her memory, pointing out that the order was years old, but Martinez stood by her testimony, noting that only urgent requests use the trolley reference. Next, building automation engineer Tyler Blake took the stand. Tyler Blake, who serviced the building's lighting controls, authenticated maintenance logs showing manual overrides performed 4 times that weekend, each dimming the guest wing lights for exactly 6 minutes. Prosecutors overlaid these intervals onto a line graph with Brown's 3 memos, showing alignment between the peaks in Brown's recordings and the lighting dips. Hartley questioned Blake, asking if the overrides could have been cosmetic adjustments by a stylist or photographer. Blake acknowledged the system allowed such changes, but noted that they would normally be recorded in a user memo field. The 4 overrides in question had no such entries. Orlando Brown then took the stand. Prosecutor Celia Grant first asked him to confirm his voice in the memos. Brown agreed, then explained that he had surrendered his primary phone upon arrival and signed a non-disclosure agreement on a tablet. He kept the secondary phone, he testified, because he felt uneasy with the unfamiliar protocols and wanted to document the situation personally. Hartley then began a methodical cross-examination. Hartley's cross-examination focused on discrepancies in Brown's earlier media interviews, particularly about the number of guests and the time events ended. Brown explained that those public statements were informal and based on memory, while the memos were real-time impressions with embedded timestamps. Hartley then questioned Brown's cooperation agreement in Nevada, suggesting it could influence his testimony. Brown responded that the agreement would be voided if his statements were proven false, emphasizing that accuracy was his priority, not seeking leniency. After a brief recess, prosecutors played the second voice memo, timestamped just after 3 a.m. In it, Brown describes the corridor lights changing to a dim red pulse, which he compares to a heartbeat, and notes that staff escorted small groups through mirrored doors. Prosecutors paused the recording to show a motion-triggered camera in an adjacent maintenance hallway captured a frame showing housekeeping staff pushing a cart labeled "Refresh," time-stamped within a minute, of the radio chatter in Brown's memo. The defense objected to the image as cumulative, but Judge Subramanian allowed it, stating that corroboration from different systems helps the jury assess reliability. To further support the recording's authenticity, the government called signal analysis expert Dr. Maya Chen. She testified that the ambient noise profile, specifically the hum of ventilation and distant background music, remained consistent across all 3 Brown memos, suggesting they were recorded in the same architectural zone. Hartley countered by questioning the sample size, arguing the noise profile could apply to multiple hallways. Chen replied that while ventilation noise might repeat, the combined signature of music and other sounds was unique to the specific location. Dr. Maya Chen testified that the bleed reverb length and HVAC cadence narrowed the location to a specific wing layout, as documented in the floor plans. As the day concluded, prosecutors introduced a voicemail left on Brown's secondary phone. The message, identified by forensic comparison, featured a voice, confirmed as a Combs staff coordinator, inviting Brown back for another weekend and mentioning, "We'll have the heartbeat upgraded and ready." The defense objected, calling the phrase ambiguous, but the court overruled, citing prior testimony that heartbeat referred to specific lighting cues and security cycles. During cross, Hartley read a housekeeping handbook that described a heartbeat glow as a premium ambiance feature. Prosecutors clarified that the handbook referred to a constant architectural element, whereas the equipment logs documented unscheduled manual overrides. The court adjourned with the prosecution planning to call one final records analyst to link payroll anomalies to the weekends captured in Brown's memos. The defense intends to present a hospitality expert and an automation system executive, arguing that system overrides and linen surges were routine for high-profile events. Judge Subramanian instructed both parties to prepare concise summaries for the jury, emphasizing that technical details must focus strictly on matters related to the indictment. As the case moves forward, the prosecution's timeline, combining Brown's first-hand observations with synchronized network data and supply chain documentation, remains central. The defense aims to reframe this evidence as coincidental, arguing that estate operations often leave complex traces that could be misinterpreted as intentional design. The jury will soon decide which interpretation meets the federal court's standard of proof,